Welcome to another edition of What's the Big Idea, where we hear big ideas from the leading voices shaping current and emerging best practices in both the professional and nonprofit world. I'm your host, Hank Boyer, founder of Boyer Management Group. Today, we're speaking with Christine Miles, who's founder of a company called EQuipt. She's also the CEO there. She's an author and fellow host of the #1 business radio show east of the Mississippi River, Executive Leaders Radio. Christine, welcome to What's the Big Idea? Tell us a little bit about EQuipt. What does the company do?
EQuipt is named very aptly after exactly what we do, which is we equip people with the EQ to turbocharge their IQ. We know 90% of star performance is really around the emotional skills.
And is there an area specifically that you like to focus on?
Yeah, the #1 problem we solve is what it costs not to listen. We know that impact is huge, and we know how to solve that problem.
Interesting. So your passion's listening. I'm curious, why listening? Why is that your passion, and why is it so important?
Well, it really goes back to my backstory, which started as early as I can remember at 4 or 5. I had a dad who was an entrepreneur, so I always loved business. But I had a mother who lost her mother and grew up without her. So she had some psychological issues. Interestingly, though, the way she showed up in the room was outgoing and charismatic and warm and funny. So people didn't see the pain. And I learned very early to see what wasn't said and what wasn't seen. And that helped me overachieve from a pretty early age, that listening differently. And I succeeded well beyond my competence because of that skill. And so I want to help people learn the same thing.
That's interesting. You mentioned a few minutes ago that it costs us something not to listen. What do you mean?
Well, from a personal standpoint, I think about all the misses we have throughout the day with our children and our spouses. And that's like death by 1,000 cuts over the years, and it creates the disconnect. From a business standpoint, the same thing's going on. Salespeople going out to understand their customer service people getting the angry call, CEOs or leaders understanding their employees. It all leads to disengagement and misses. And so the cost and impact, it's even hard to quantify and measure. It's so big.
So why, I have to ask the obvious question, why don't people listen effectively? If that, and I would agree with you that it's a huge problem, but what's behind them not listening effectively?
Well, it's interesting. It's like the elephant in the room. When I ask leaders and people how important listening is, they're like, yes, it's one of the most important business skills. And I said, well, how much time do you spend devoted to developing that? And they kind of scratch their head and go, not really any. And we spend zero amount of training in our education in the States on listening, 0 through 12. I mean, kindergarten through 12, there's not a listening course. And then only 2% of people in business have had any kind of listening training. And it's usually maybe a day, and it's not really telling you how to do it. It's just telling you what to do.
So I noticed a term on your website, transformational listening, and I sense that has something to do with what you do. What is transformational listening?
Well, we want to transform how people listen to change the way the conversation happens. And so hearing is a sense, and that's what most of us are doing. We only take in or listen to 20% of what is said. So then we have attentive listening, where we attend to the person differently. That tells you the what, but not the how. To transform how you listen is to discover something, uncover an insight, find that buried treasure in the conversation that really something comes to the surface that wasn't seen. Very much like when I was young. How do you hear what isn't said? How do you understand what isn't seen and bring that to light in the conversation? That's how we transform. That's what transformational listening is.
So what are some tips you would like to share with people about how they can become a more effective listener?
Well, part of it is you need the tools. It's not your fault. We blame the listener for not listening when we're teaching them how to talk, right? So part of it is they need the tools. And one of the things just to be aware of as a tip is to say, when you think about somebody says something to you, typically we just respond. And do we really understand what's said before we respond? And there's ways to get at that, and people don't know how. But if you just pay attention to, did I really understand or get you? That's one of the steps that you can take to even change how you listen a little bit better.
Christine, is there an area, professional area or personal area where transformational listening just makes a world of difference in someone's life?
Well, I'm definitely a believer that it impacts life. And first of all, you have to learn to listen to yourself as well. And when you transform how you listen to others, you transform how you listen to yourselves. You just change a little bit who you are and become a little bit better. But which is part of why this is more than a business. This is a movement. The world's very disconnected. Digital technology has made us even more disconnected. But pivoting to results oriented, which I also am, if you want a better relationship, you'll listen differently. If you want better sales outcomes, faster selling on value versus selling on price, if you want a shorter sales cycle, if you want employee engagement, you'll listen differently to make those impacts. It'll happen, but you need to learn how.
We've been speaking with Christine Miles, founder and CEO of EQuipt, here on What's the Big Idea. Christine, what's the big idea that you would like viewers to take away from our session today?
The big idea is that listening is the most powerful communication tool, not talking. And if we want to change the conversations in a meaningful way, we'll figure out how to listen differently rather than talk better.
And what's the website where people can learn more about listening and EQuipt, your company?
The website is equipped-people.com. And just as a note, the book is in progress. So it'll be coming out at the end of the summer. It's called Failing to Listen.
Wow. I'd like to thank Christine Miles for joining me today on What's the Big Idea, sharing her thoughts on how listening completely changes the conversation and therefore the results, making today's show both entertaining and educational. I'd like to thank our viewers for watching also, because without our viewers, we wouldn't have a show. For What's the Big Idea, I'm your host, Hank Boyer, reminding you to use the big ideas that you've heard today to make a difference. Bye-bye, folks. Until next time.